Coming to you live from Tampa Bay, this is The Art Sign. Hello, you cool cats and kittens. It's Johnny Torres coming to you from the home of the Tiger King. That is Tampa Bay, Florida. This is The Art Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. We apologize for our little technical glitch there at the beginning of the show, but we want to make sure we give you the best show possible tonight because we do have a lot to talk about. So real quick, we'll run down the table and the cast of characters for tonight one more time. Let's see, over on the far left, Anibal Cabrera. How are you, sir? And then we've got Jake Hoffman over on the far right.
How's it going? Hopefully you guys can hear me this time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us if you're still watching.
And then joining us at the new chair, is
quarantine corner.
The quarantine corner. That's right. That is Parker, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you for coming back. It's been a little while.
It's been a while.
And as we do every show, let's go ahead and run down real quick our list of topics. Again, we got the $2 trillion stimulus. We'll break down the details of that. Joe Biden, is there buyer's remorse on behalf of the Democratic Party? We'll pick that apart, along with Governor Cuomo in New York and media bias. And then we'll start to get back into the coronavirus topic here at the state level with the state response, Governor DeSantis, and so on. And then down to the local level, now that we have a safer at-home order and what exactly that means. The River Church, also somewhat of a local topic, making national headlines. A church pastor decides to hold service with a couple hundred people over the weekend, and it is not turning out so well. So we'll talk about that and why that's important, and of course, how we kind of are perceiving this issue. For those of you who may not be from the area, it's not as simple as you might think. And then, of course, everybody's favorite internet topic right now, the hotness that is the Tiger King. And again, we are coming to you from Tampa Bay, so we know a little something about what's going on over there at Big Cat Rescue and Carol Baskin. All right. To start off this show, Anibal Cabrera has a little statement about us getting together. Some people aren't quite comfortable with us getting together to do the show, and we want to make sure we address that up front before we get into tonight's topic. So, Anibal, take it away.
Thanks, Johnny. We at the Yard Signs and Tampa Bay Young Republicans would like to thank the Hillsborough County Emergency Policy and Leadership Team for taking the appropriate action and listening to the constituents and health advisors. There's a delicate tug of war between the social contract in our community and civil liberty as citizens of this nation, and we feel that balance was achieved in our community with a safer at-home ordinance. We are all in agreement that this is a serious matter, and we are doing all that we can to flatten the curve, follow CDC guidance, that we can stop this virus and save lives. As younger people, it is important that we take care of those that took care of us when we were children. Remember to check up on your elderly neighbors, friends, and family members. There are countless stories of citizens dropping off food, supplies, providing assistance, and still making sure they follow guidance when they go and visit their parents, either across the lanai or even the pool. From day one, Hillsborough County Schools, which is the 7th largest in the country, have been impacted. For many of these kids in our communities, the teachers and support staff are sometimes the one and only positive example that these kids have and a guaranteed meal for that day. Thank you for stepping up and seeing the need that was created because of the virus, and thank you to educators for learning how to work with Zoom and providing a virtual learning experience for our kids. I would encourage parents to make sure that they do not do anything inappropriate while all their kids are still there. You are working from home and they are learning from home. We would like to also thank those multiple businesses that are continuing service during this critical time, making sure that the shelves are fully stocked at any moment, and knowing that the CARE Act has been passed, and we will be pushing out more information about that later on in today's podcasts. A lot of young Republicans and young people in general are part of the gig economy, small business owners, 1099 workers, and sole proprietors. And we know that we're doing our best to get you guys back on your feet. Thank you to all religious and nonprofit organizations for providing services throughout the community, and we will talk about the river later. And finally, thank you to the healthcare and first responders for all that they've done and will continue to do as they fight the virus at the front lines as they fight the virus. We are all Americans, citizens of this greatest country, blessed by our Creator. We know that during this time of great strain, we rally. Many companies and individuals didn't need a government mandate to start retooling their facilities and factories to build ventilators, test kits, or even starting to bottle hand sanitizer in their backyard. But we did all of that. And we see it every time there's a natural disaster or when our neighbor needs help. We as a nation are notorious and always fashionably late to any party. But when we get out of the gate, we always win the race. And we will be there to help out the world to rebuild and heal. Remember, safer at home is the current ordinance for our community. Practice social distancing and please wash your hands. I know you shouldn't be told this at your age. However, it was only 3 years ago that we were telling everyone not to eat Tide Pods.
Thank you, Anibal.
Oh my goodness!
I don't know.
All right.
I won't contradict too many things in that statement right off the bat. So I'll just say that again. I've been very openly critical about a lot of the things that you talked about there, both locally, at the state level, even at the national level of what's going on right now. So hopefully we can dive into a little bit more on kind of where we stand on everything. But again, I think that you did sum up the seriousness of the situation and the fact that we are doing everything we can to abide by all of the rules that are currently in place.
Correct.
So, Johnny, you want to jump us into $2 trillion that we just spent?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're dealing with all this coronavirus, and this is going to have an enormous economic impact. A lot of people are already talking, certainly recession, possibly even a depression. Folks out of work, folks that can't work. Part of the reason why, and I'll express this again later with this stay-at-home, safer-at-home orders, all you're doing is preventing more people from going to work. But we'll get into that later. What did happen was the president was able to get a deal passed with Democrats for a $2 trillion deal. What do you guys? How are you guys feeling about this? I mean, obviously, a lot of money. We're already severely in debt. We haven't seen a lot of budget cuts from the Republican Party in quite some time. I'm kind of torn. I think it's a necessary evil. You guys?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't want the government to interfere with our business, but a couple weeks ago they interfered with business, yeah. Right? So if you shut down businesses, you have to reimburse businesses. You can't just go out there and tell everyone they can't work and then just expect them to pay their bills, right? So you have to do something here that helps people, everyday people, your middle class, lower class. Again, people that have millions of dollars saved up, they don't need as much help, through a couple months. Again, but I do understand why, and I kind of want to explain tonight why I think it's important that people are calling it like big business bailouts, like they were, like the airlines being bailed out. And again, all of these different businesses employ a lot of people. And, just because some money goes to a corporation, and again, they put provisions in this that prevented things like stock buybacks, which has been a really contentious point amongst liberals and, even people on our side. Nobody wants to see them get free money from taxpayers and then them go buy back stocks and kind of line their own pockets. But, those provisions were put in there. We finally got a deal done. It was denied by Democrats 3 times. Probably almost again. They did eventually come to a resolution here, but there's a lot of good to be taken with this. There's also a lot of bad. Again, it's still a bill. There's still $2 trillion, and some people got a lot of money that they didn't necessarily need. There's pork to the bill. There definitely was. There's really no way around that. But the important part of getting money in Americans' hands it was done. Again, could it have been more? Probably. The fact that we're not going to be shut, we're going to be shut down now until at least April 30th from what the president's saying. And I would say mid-May is what we're looking at, and even realistically into June or July. And so this is not going to be the first one of these bills passed, and it's not going to be the first check you're receiving probably either.
I think this is definitely not the first bill that's going to be passed. I feel that there's going to be at least 1 or 2 more acts of this kind of grand amount. And I agree with you. This is a completely different situation. When we had the housing crisis that became our credit crisis, that was banks and individuals. There was a large amount of people that were to blame. Even the federal government was to blame for the last big economic crisis that we had into play. However, this particular crisis is government started, I would say. They are the ones that are causing the airlines to just shut down because of the reduction of travel. individual counties and states are requiring stay at home and even shelter at home, so you can't even work at all. And so that's where things are starting to escalate. Of that, it is if the government is requiring us to have these many shutdowns, and it's going to require the government to step in and give an amount. And I think they did all right on the first set of tranches that they've released. The Paycheck Protection Act, I think, is really important for individual small businesses to keep their current employees on the payroll. They will be able to get those money.
I think that there's good when it comes to some of those things. I think it's going to be really difficult for one of the big things that I've heard from a talking point from a local standpoint, even a state and federal, talking point is go to the SBA and get a loan, right?
Yeah, but that's almost it's taking almost like 6 hours to get someone on the phone, and then it keeps on crashing.
Not even just that, but I mean, it's not even something feasible for a lot of people. And again, it's still a loan, and who knows when it's actually going to come in, because you could have applied a week or two ago, and then you probably haven't heard anything from them, and you have no idea. And so that's why, I mean, again, at this point, we're looking at. I'm going to say this over and over again, not just tonight, but probably in the future as well, that we're looking at probably, I would say, at least 10 million jobs lost in this country.
I do not agree with that at all.
We are at 3 million last month.
Unemployment rate, or those that submitted for unemployment as a nation.
Yeah. We're going to be at, as I'm saying, as a nation, we are easily going to surpass 10 million.
And now what's happening is that the loans are coming into play. People are going to get money.
And no one's going to use their loan that they have to pay back in a year.
If you do, if you would have read
the
Paycheck Protection Act, if you keep them on the payroll, that money is then as a grant and is forgiven. That is something that people need to understand. So
I understand, but if you are a small business, and when I say small, not SBA $50 million to $150 million small business, like a real small business where you are a restaurant and you are closed down right now, you're not keeping anyone on payroll on the hopes that you have a loan or that turns into a grant or something like that. Like, these people are laid off. They're laid off. They don't want to deal with it. And that's why you see 3 million people filing for unemployment last week. I mean, if you could pull up the chart right now, there's one, we'll have to attach it to the show, but we doubled the amount of filed unemployment claims last week alone. The last time around was 2009 or so, around when the crash was. Just completely annihilated that record.
But
it's not something that's going to be fixed by SBA
loans. You're not
loans.
looking at this correctly. With the crash, it was a slow moving target that happened. With this, it's one big hit.
Yeah.
So that's why I completely understand why you saw the large hit. In our region alone, we saw 7,548 people file for unemployment. Will that increase in the next few weeks? Yes. But I think the bulk of that is going to be felt in the next week, week and this week. And then it'll trickle down because people are going to get back into it. Now, the way that the act is being done right now, you have the ability to ask for a tranche in the beginning and then be able to pick which one you want to work with. They're releasing them within 24 to 72 hours when it comes to the first tranche of $25,000. So they're trying to do their best to escalate and move these forward. And that's why they've lowered their requirements of you being able to get a loan from the SBA. SBL. Yeah. SBA, yeah. Again,
just because the requirements are lower doesn't mean it's gonna save people. Again, it's important. I'm glad that it's been done, but I worry for the future of this country because of the fact that there is going to end up being 10 million people unemployed within the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so.
Yes, but then those people are also going to we've had. I think there's 7 or 8 companies that are looking to hire 100,000 people within their tranches.
There are a few companies that are thriving out there in this situation that are built. They happen to be in a sweet spot with a bit of a business model where they deliver food or something like that. But the vast majority of people are not. So I mean, I don't really know. It's hard to spin this in a good way, right?
There's no
good news here, right? Again, I'm glad that something was passed. I'm glad that it didn't involve reducing emissions on planes or things like that. I'm glad none of that stuff was put in there.
It did force the cruise ships to now be able to have docking in the United States. Before they were not officially United States companies, and now they have to be.
And there are some good
gotta
that
pay
happened.
your taxes.
Yeah. So again, $2 trillion. You're getting a check within the next, hopefully, 2 weeks or so.
They said mid-April is when individuals that have a direct deposit from their taxes the last year or two.
Yeah. So to me, again, hard to spin this, hard to make this a good news at all. But
It's good
There's-
news that
there's
it,
money-
it's good
there's-
news that it got passed. It's good news that there is money coming down the pike. It's good news that we'll have an option, because I agree. If you are forcing businesses to close, then you need to pony up the money. And when I say that, I mean pony up our money, because that's really
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah.
Don't expect a tax return for the next 2 years.
And the biggest thing that I saw that was, for our age group as young Republicans that are here, and not just Republicans, but anyone that's young and watching this show that probably graduated college pretty recently, they have student loans right now. And again, if they can't find a job right now, there's a 6-month suspension of student loan payments, which is great. Actually, I think that's a really good way of pausing the payments while this is going on for something that is not in an immediate need, as far as like putting food on the table.
And I think that's something that's very important that people need to know, that you need to call in and request to be part of that program.
I actually don't know if you have there. I happened to look just
we've been
yesterday.
Watching,
it's
people
been
are getting
iffy.
money taken out of their accounts still with their program.
They're updating it daily. I mean, this is we can do this show. Don't rely on us for the most up to date information on how you're supposed to handle these things
right now, like today.
No, because every few hours,
it might completely
every
change.
few hours they have a meeting on it, and then all of a sudden it changes, and then like the rules change. And so again, this is where we're at right now. I mean, realistically, like if you have some student loans that are laying around and you have to make payments on them, you're probably good by unless it was due yesterday or a few days. This past week or so, they're going to be lenient with you, and again, you're going to have like 6 months or so to pause that.
But we need to do this. Money needs to go to the states. Money needed to go to corporations and individuals, and that's what's going on. These are not just, and again, the guidance is still being written.
Yeah.
But it's not just for companies that have 2 or 3 W-2 employees, companies that are sole proprietors, companies that are 1099. Again, the big part of the gig, everyone that's in here except for one person is a part of the gig economy. And because of that, we are sole proprietors, we are sole LLCs, and this is our business. We are the business owners.
So the one piece of this entire $2 trillion that I want to hit on, because I think it's made people really mad, is that the Senate and Congress paid themselves quite a bit of money, more than $1,200.
I was very surprised
in this, and
do you know who did that? Or
well, not who did it. It was just in the bill, right? I mean, they each got, I want to say it was like about $65,000 or so per Congress. The office. So again, you're probably looking at splitting that between their staffers and things like that. But I can tell you that if every staffer had $65,000, kind of put in there for, they listed things like childcare. Things that they've been telling the American people that you can't afford and you can't have that. It's really bad optics to then pay yourself $65,000, per person, and then go and tell everybody, oh, you get $1,200 though, while we're paying ourselves more, while you make significantly more and have significally better benefits. So,
well, and they're still working.
Yeah.
I mean, they've collected their revenue. They're collecting their revenue. I mean, there's no need for government employees, to get this additional money. There's no excuse for it. I mean, it's a money grab.
It definitely is a money grab, but I'm not surprised that it happened. But I also believe that we couldn't stop it. If you allowed it to turn into even more, and that's what the Democrats did. They turned it into a Christmas tree. Just putting everything in there. And so you needed something. I wish it was cleaner. I wish it was thrown in there, knowing that we're gonna have to do this again in probably a month.
Yeah, it's gonna end up happening.
Well, and the worst part is you had Nancy Pelosi, who put in $25 million for the Kennedy Center, and then at the same time that the bill passes, then they go ahead and fire all their musicians. So again, it's back to the old days of pork, where they would just throw stuff on top of a bill so they could get money back in their districts.
Yeah.
Well, if this does happen again, do they get another $65,000?
I mean, they might. I mean, it depends on what's written in the bill, right? So
it's true.
Yeah, I mean, you have no idea. I mean, this is why it takes, even if it's just us sitting here complaining on a TV,
which we do very well, by the way,
on our live stream podcast. You have to hold people accountable, and you have to hold, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or Democrat. Like there's plenty of corruption to go around in Washington
on both sides,
and on both sides, and so we need to hold them all accountable. That's kind of all I have to say about it.
From hitting them for selling stock, which we
did last week. You
go back
last week,
and we can.
How
we
are
need
they
to hit
still
that.
in office?
I don't know, but it's gonna. But when those trials come up, we need to talk about it and keep on pushing. But the biggest factor is, yes, money's coming. It's not coming right away, but it is on its way, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. I think a lot of people were, and I didn't like the position that people were having on this when it came to like, well, they should be having savings and they should have. Yes, that's true, but again, this is a government. This is
government shutdown. I mean,
not individually.
It's a lot of money. I mean, one thing that should come out of this, it won't, but what should come out of this is that again, we should be forcing Congress to balance the budget every year. I mean, the fact that we've just added $2 trillion to what, 23 trillion or 27 trillion? What are we at now?
We're at
this
23,
point?
25.
I mean, the point is nobody even knows because it's so unbelievably a big, giant fake number of fake money at this point that like they're printing money and they're printing money on top of printed money, and it's like if you to try and like delve into what's going on here. I mean, we should hold them more responsible for the debt. No one's talking about the debt. They're not talking about in the Republican platform. Not talking about in the Democratic platform. That's for sure.
But you don't talk
okay,
about
but it goes
debt
back
during
to
a disaster.
Okay, but it goes back to who are we indebted to?
Yeah, not China anymore.
Who are we indebted to? I mean, they're printing all this money, and then now we're talking about electronic currencies, right? And who are we in debt to?
People.
I mean, they're just printing out money, and it's devaluing the dollar. But
people that keep on buying bonds, that's what people are doing still.
Who is
to the point to where it's a negative bond yield, which
and
means
who's collecting on it?
No one's. You're still going to get paid off on it. But the thing is, the only area in this world that's actually somewhat available that you'll get your money back is the United States. Europe is falling apart at the moment. Two of its largest economic powerhouses are on the verge of collapse because of what's happening. China will never be trusted again of what they've done, which brings them down even further. So who's left? The United States. That's why we can continue to pay and do what we do, is because people are willing to buy our bonds, and that's what happens. No one cares about the UN.
So we're going to end up getting ourselves stuck in that, and I don't think we're going to have any chance to talk about all of the fun meat of what's going on here.
Jake just really wants to talk about Tiger King.
Well, I do absolutely want to talk about Tiger King.
That is our last topic.
But we have to make sure we have time for it at the end. Gosh.
All right, real quick. Again, thank you everybody for watching The Yard Sign. We appreciate you watching from wherever you may be watching. Thanks to our friends at BizPack Review and Conservative News Today for carrying the show. We are looking and following our comment section there as well, so feel free to give us some feedback. We love you watching the show. Don't forget you can also get an audio version of the show on Apple, Spotify, and Google podcast platforms. Our next topic, let's go ahead and bring up the list one more time. Biden's remorse, or is it buyer's remorse for the Democratic Party? Early on in this coronavirus, people were like, okay, where's Joe Biden? He's been MIA. He was very MIA early on in this virus, and some people were saying that Trump was just hogging all the airtime. Again, the media chooses what they do or don't put on television. Now that he's starting to come out on television, not boding well for him. I mean, he's slurring his words. He's losing his train of thought. He's saying things that don't make a lot of sense. Is there anything that Democrats can do, and do you think there's buyer's remorse happening here?
Is there something that they can do? Yes. Should they do it? No. The last time they tried to do something like this was in 1968 when they put Humphrey on there, who didn't win not one primary, but yet they needed to put him in there, and that was a contested convention. It has happened in the past. They can do it. It's theoretically, but they shouldn't.
That's not going to happen. I mean, again, Joe Biden, actually, I will disagree with you guys here, and I don't like giving Joe Biden a lot of credit, but over the past couple weeks, because he's been quiet and letting this whole thing take place, I mean, what I'll be critical about with both him and even the president is that, they have not been vocally instructing the country on how they're going to lead us out of it. And I don't feel like there's been, if I'm Joe Biden and I'm his camp, I am using this, entire, current situation in America to look us in the camera that, he's not so great at doing, but saying, look, America, things are going to be okay. Things are going to get better. And let me show you the way. And, there's been a lack of leadership, again, from the top down. And, for Joe Biden, he had a couple of good comments, I want to say, about, again, that he did try and say, like, Americans are strong. And the one thing that he said that I really liked was about that we need to be told the truth. And that's something that I hadn't heard a talking point from any other politician at any other level, was that he was like, Americans can handle the truth. And nobody wants to have the hard conversation about, okay, well, what are we looking at here from a death count standpoint? What are we looking at here from an unemployment standpoint? Like, where do those two things mesh? And like, what are we going to do about this? And he was the first person to say, let's tell America the truth. I mean, whether he's going to or whether he is doing is a different thing. Again, right now, what's frustrating Republicans and the people who are on the right that are saying that this is kind of like all designed to take down Trump is that it is hurting Trump and from again his economy, again being able to talk about these kind of things.
I don't think it's hurting him. He's now looked up as a war president. His
Some
approval rating is through the roof compared to where it was again, and he's reduced the gap between him and Biden by almost 10 plus points.
Yeah, I don't believe the numbers, and I don't believe the polls. So
that's fine. You don't believe anything.
No one's who's answering their phone right now. They're scared that the coronavirus is going to go through the phone.
No, even more people are answering their phones now
They
because
don't even
everyone's
have call
home
centers.
and they have
They don't
nothing
even
else
have
to
call
do.
centers right now. They can't possibly have accurate numbers either. I don't want to listen to
Have you
polls right
run
now.
a poll center?
I'm not. They're not even going to have people like
I
sitting
had
in the
2
same room.
calls this weekend.
Do they have 6 feet?
Asking us? Yes, they have 6 feet.
In each call center.
Have you ever worked in a call center?
No, I've
Have
not worked
you?
in a call center. No, I've not worked in a
Of
call center.
course,
But the point
he
is
has
that
never worked in a
but
call
they're
center.
all closed right now. So
You
I don't
know
you
what a
cannot
call
tell
center
me
looks
that
like, which
polls are
means that you
accurate.
don't know if they're 6 feet
They're
or not.
I can tell you that they're closed.
Not all call centers are closed because
Why
they're
not?
able to abide by the 6-foot rule.
I am done with this conversation.
Of course
and
you are, because you're losing
I'm
it.
done with this.
At the end of the day,
polls are inaccurate. You can tell me in the comments if I'm right.
I agree they're
Thank you.
inaccurate, but at the end of the day, any poll that gives Trump that he's actually winning, which means that, and again, all these polls are biased. The media is biased. Everyone's biased. However, when you see it that it's increasing on his side, you know there's something crazy going on in the country. And people like it. People like him and what he's doing. He's talking every single day. And that's why people don't like Biden, because when he talks, he looks like an idiot talking to
I
people.
agree.
And
Lately,
it's
that's been the
worse.
case. Yes.
Yeah. But who they do love right now? Let's talk about who they do love. They love
FOMO for Cuomo.
FOMO for Cuomo, man. Like
Oh my God.
the media's obsession with Governor Cuomo. I mean, how many of my friends have told me that I need to listen to Governor Cuomo and what he's saying right now on the left?
Dry having to have gone to school in New Jersey.
And listen
All
to,
I see is Cuomo. Cuomo's everyone's man crush
I
Monday.
don't understand.
And
Because
they love-
it's some
it's such a
some
crush.
hope, and with the things like I talk to all my friends up north, and it's such a difference between my friends up north compared down here, because down here everyone's very much more relaxed about the whole situation happening right now. Up north, my friends are scared to death about what's happening, and they're about to get cabin fever, and I think their lockdown's gonna be forcefully pushed out.
Yeah, I don't think we should be letting them into Florida. But if I was in New York,
I'm
if
so for the
if
travel
I
ban.
was in New York, I would be on the first.
We
I'd have the
have-
first rented
We
car
have
or flight
so
out
many
of there.
friends that just showed up on Palm Island, and I was like, "What are you people doing here?"
Yeah.
Everyone is at their timeshares.
Stay home.
Everyone is where they.
So I
they
under-
all left. The real Floridians that lived and worked in New York left about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
All here.
I understand why people are leaving New York. Because again, I would be leaving New York for sure. Did we lose the stream here?
Oh, we did lose the stream.
God damn it. Goddamn cables. I moved the monitor like not even an inch.
It's frozen. But it's still running.
I don't know if we're still live or not.
Oh. All right, so we're back. All right. Sorry, we froze for a second there. So what I was saying, though, was that, again, if you're in New York, there really wasn't a strategy in place. And again, if you were listening to the Tampa Young Republicans about a week ago when we wrote a letter, all we were asking for was, hey, why don't you come up with a plan before you decide to shut everything down?
Like, we have to have steps. We can't go to total lockdown. We have to have steps, and there are laws that say we have to have emergency plans that happen, and that includes virus, infectious hazards. Those are what's the word I'm
No,
looking
the
You're-
requirement for
yeah.
city planning.
Yeah.
And this is what I
We
get
didn't
really
have
upset
it.
about, because he makes it sound like that the president's not giving him anything and everything else. First of all, every governor has had that Preparedness Act, the HSS pandemic plan since 2005, which is requiring X amount of ventilators, X amount of hospital beds. So they've always had this. This isn't just the Republicans.
Yeah.
This isn't just the Democrats. This is anyone in government. They've had this for a while, and the numbers that they're throwing out there are so ridiculous that you had to have the health and services advisors come out and say, okay, guys, pump the brakes. Well, you're saying, 3 million people dead.
This is the thing.
Let's all calm
this
the
is the
F
thing.
down.
This is the thing. I mean, again, if you go back and watch this podcast, like for the last 6 weeks or so,
we've been talking about
We've been
this.
saying that they are still working off completely inaccurate numbers, and that's like something I've been complaining about over and over again. There's no the main study that they built this entire model off of, the guy came back and said, well, I could be off by, instead of 2 million people, maybe it's like 50,000. Like, I mean,
it's so crazy.
The wide variety. I mean, I listen to.
But the media loves that. The media
Of course the media loves it.
that
They like
kind
the
of
biggest
craziness.
numbers.
Story.
Yeah.
It's
creates a
drama, and drama sells. Story sells.
Yeah, and
Facts
again,
tell.
the news. I don't know what the news numbers look like, but I'm sure they're really high because everyone's just sitting around watching the
Now
news.
I feel
all
like
day.
I
nothing to
don't.
do.
There's like nothing cohesive. It feels like because I just don't pay attention to the numbers anymore.
I
Because
almost
just
watched CNN. That's how desperate I was.
Well, no, listen, but this is something I heard today from the. I don't want to butcher his title, but essentially he was the head of our disaster medical in Florida. I forget. I feel bad for missing his name. He's a
Moskowitz?
doctor.
Oh, no.
Not sure. But what he was saying was that when they asked him for advice on what what is it going to look like what are the numbers we're looking at, what about this study we saw, what about this study we saw, he was like, well, all the studies are saying this and this and that, and they're different, they're all based off of different models. So if your doctor, the people that are the head doctors in the situation are not like relying all like with a consensus around a single model, like you shouldn't either. And there's no way that you can look somebody in the face and go, I know for a fact that 2 million people are going to die from this or 50,000 people are going to die from this, because you don't know. You don't know because we're working with completely inaccurate numbers from start to finish because no one's tested. Nobody has any idea how many millions of people have this disease. And it could be in the millions.
And that's the biggest problem, is that there is such a large incubation time. There's such a large variance of someone that can be completely asymptomatic to someone that needs a ventilator immediately. And that's the biggest problem. Now, we're not discrediting what's happening at the hospitals themselves. And I encourage anyone to hop on those emergency policy calls that occur every Monday and Thursday at 1:30, so that you can actually hear accurate numbers from the people that are running Advent, that are running Bake Care, that are running HTA. Those are the individuals I want to hear from. I could honestly care less about the additional people, even though I thought they did a great job this last call, because the first call was a nightmare situation.
So let's talk.
But the most recent call, which was today, they were talking about like they have a plan. There's a dashboard. They can count anyone that's coming in. Now, the biggest problem I have that I'm seeing is that our frontline individuals, those that are first responders, nurses, ERs, doctors, those are the people that have been running on 13 hours a day for the last few weeks. And those are the people that we're going to start having problems with, because they're getting exhausted by the additional level of what normally does not happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with how thankful we are for all of our first responders and our healthcare workers who are putting themselves on the line here. I think that people should be I think people are appreciative of them, but our state and local battles, which is our next topic here that we're going to kind of go into, they have not really, I felt like, had a plan on how to handle those people, how to most effectively keep them safe and be able to keep them at work, and then again, and also like exclude the most at risk. And so something that I personally have been working on for the past few days is getting legislation in the hands of people who can do something about it at our federal level about how do you effectively quarantine pre-quarantine old people before they get sick, right? And employees that are in the public sector that are going to be in these what they'll describe as hotbeds at some point, right? Like your jails, your substance abuse centers, your places where large amounts of people are going to be congregated as in the public sphere, and then remove the most at risk from those places and keep them safe for a while.
That's a pretty difficult.
It is difficult.
But it's required.
It's very difficult. But
It's that because you have to, because I've been looking at these codes recently, and you have to be able to continue your work, but you still have to expect a increase in visitors if there's a disaster available, and you have to have space for those that are going to put others at risk. You have to have those, and you have to make sure you have enough room for extra patients within those at-risk centers.
And that's what's happening here.
And we don't have that.
And at least in the state of Florida, in the city of Tampa, the Hillsborough County, the reports that we're getting from the main medical professionals are saying that they do have beds, they do have ICUs,
right now
ventilators, and they also, and the county administrators have also said that they have plenty, that they are organizing hotels to be able to, if there is an influx necessary. Now, do I think, and this is why it gets me so upset, people are like, oh, we're going to be the next New York. We're going to be the next LA.
No, we're not.
That's so
we're not.
stupid. We do not have the same kind of density. We don't have the same kind of transportation issues and everything else.
Even the doctors that you heard on the emergency call today, they are saying we're not New York.
No.
We're not LA. We're Florida.
Yeah.
We're not built the same. And you know what? Guess what? What's insane about Cuomo, by the way, which like everyone is giving him the most praise in the entire world, they're running their subways.
Exactly.
They're running their subways. Is anybody
crazy.
like, did we gonna talk about this at all? Like the dirtiest place in probably the country is a New York subway.
Apparently they've been taking photos of like the chairs in the subways being actually clean, and people are shocked of the color.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know they were like light brown.
Also, the political aspects of this. A month and a half ago, Cuomo was making sure everyone still went and celebrated Chinese New Year's and still went out in the streets to the festivals and everything else. The amount of hypocrisy that the government issued, because they were like, stopping travel is racist. Now they want to shut everything down. And
Well,
so, like,
not to sidetrack us too much, but you got the mayor of New Orleans blaming Trump for not
Oh my
canceling
God.
Mardi
So
Gras
stupid.
when it's within her rights. That is her right to make that decision. It is not the president's place to make that decision for her.
Whatever. She's gonna
And
be-
had he done it, he would have been called a racist for canceling Mardi Gras.
she's not going to be there much longer. She'll get caught up on another corruption charge like every other mayor in New Orleans.
Well, the thing is, though, is that again, when you have these governors who are trying to like basically shut down each other, is kind of what it seems like, right? Like you have like the mayor of LA and like governor of California and Chicago has been like Illinois has like really
And
tried.
that's kind of how it felt like 2 weeks ago. Like we were like we can't go tit for tat. On
They're
this.
all trying to fight each other on like who can shut down the hardest, and then like, and then you have our mayor Jane Castor who's over here in Tampa saying, "Oh, I'm on the phone with our Chicago mayor and San Francisco mayor and stuff like that." It's like great, that's who we're taking our advice from. Like, are we still taking advice from them? Because Governor Cuomo came out and said shutting things down just axing it all is not the right move, and to me, like again, it's not the right move. Like you can't just axe the entire economy, axe everybody from talking to each other under an order, by the way, which I really want to dig into this on a state and local and federal element, because of the fact that that's what we really need to be talking about here, is because like the devil is in the details here, because there's a big difference between federal mandates and federal acts and laws coming down versus state versus local, and it takes an understanding of government to get what's going on here and like what elements are at play here and what the actual effect is. But what the real effect has been is confusion.
Correct.
Because that's the only thing that I've heard from anybody, is that
that's why
nobody
we
has
got
any idea what's going on.
with the mayor
Exactly.
2 weeks ago. Is that on Saturday? Oh, I'm going to shut everything down on Monday, and there was a huge panic buy that everyone was having. And then come Monday, she has one vote.
That was a huge misstep by her. Before we get into that, I know that's our next topic, but our buddy George doing a good job giving us some information here on the back end of the show. Trump steals nation for longer shutdown after experts warn virus could kill over 200,000. So now that number has been bumped up by 100,000.
Well, no, and
that's the latest.
No, it's been dropped.
That's the thing, though, is that like those are the headlines, but the headline, I mean, Fauci just came out yesterday or today and said it's between 100,000 and 200. So then the headline, they run with a headline that says could kill up to 200,000, but now you're taking the high end of the spectrum of already fake numbers and completely made up numbers where you're not starting with data with integrity.
Yeah.
You're not starting from a point where how
but
many
the
people
thing is
are,
that
and you can't make those estimates.
as more data is coming in, that's how they're making these projections.
But that number keeps on dropping.
It keeps
'Cause
dropping.
We were here 2 weeks ago, and they were saying
It was 2 million before.
2 million people, and 150 million were going to have the virus.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were like, and that's going to blow. Yeah, of course, that's going to blow up the
Yeah.
hospitals and
Well,
ventilators.
and people
everything
are
else.
also doing everything that they need to, right? Like people are social distancing, and again, like I want to get us into, Johnny. Maybe you want to intro us into the state and local, the difference between what is being done at a local level versus what's being done at a federal level.
Yeah. For those of you keeping track, our current numbers: 163,000 cases, 3,146 deaths. This is national numbers. Recovered, great number here. 5,258 have recovered.
Well, that's what makes me mad, though, is that like we're the only number that anybody wants to use as the metric that they want to measure this entire epidemic by is number of cases. And number of cases is directly correlated to how many people you test, right? So like if you have 10 tests, but 1 million people have it, well then, yeah, when you get 20 tests, 20 people are going to have it, right? Like, I mean, that's just how this works. Like, people are going to get sick. Like, people are going to test positive, and we're going to keep seeing numbers spike up these charts exponentially
as we get more testing.
We're getting more testing, but that's a good thing. And again, it probably means that your death rate is significantly lower than you actually think it is.
Hospitalization is also
because
significantly lower.
Because of the fact that, again, people are not getting tested if they're not symptomatic.
So far, well, let's hold on. Let's go ahead and get right into let's do a proper introduction into the topic, which is that, when it comes to Florida, I think we've been handling this the right way. Reports have come out that anything Florida has asked for, we've actually been receiving, so the governor's handling this the right way. And I think the president's been handling this the right way and allowing the municipalities, the local government, the state government work the way it's supposed to. The government, the federal government should be the last resort. For them to make any kind of policy. And I think Florida has been exemplary in that way. Trump has made the decisions that he's allowed to make. DeSantis has made the decisions that he's been allowed to make, and he's allowing the local governments to make the decisions that they need to make at the local level because we're such a huge and diverse state. Again, the rules that apply here in Tampa are not going to apply in Hardee County. Because it's not as big a problem. They're not dealing with the same issues and the same circumstances that we are here in Tampa Bay.
And again, the virus still needs to run its course. Like, what frustrates me more than anything is how many times are we going to hear flatten the curve, right? Like, you need to keep the hospital resources at a certain level, and we can't go over that curve. And, like, basically, you don't want everyone getting sick in the same week.
Correct.
But at the end of the chart, the same amount of people get sick. And I don't think people realize that. Is that, like, so if they're estimating that 150 million people in the country are going to end up getting this, sickness, they're going to still get it to some extent, right? Like, they just don't want it to all happen in the same week. So,
which
like, when you talk about shutting it down, and I understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. I really do. But, I want to go to DeSantis up here. He is doing a great job, and he is getting just beaten up in the media for not shutting down the entire state. And because of the fact that what Johnny just said, the state is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Hardee County is not Pinellas County, and it's not Dade County, right? So the fact that he hasn't decided to make an action at the state level past what he's done, which is, stop large gatherings, adhere by CDC guidelines, and he shut down the beaches, which I have some problems with the beaches, but it doesn't look so good when everyone's on spring break and then they go back to, wherever they were.
You should be in a community that has a private beach. Anyways, so
I'm going to say, though, is that that's what I'm going to say about it is that, our governor has done a great job. He is being very rational, being very level-headed, and he's not letting the media get to him where they're all sitting around being like, just shut it all down, just shut it all down.
But who would have thought President Trump would not become a dictator? That, like, a Republican governor would not want to control everyone's lives during this kind of epidemic. They're showing restraint. They are being appropriate with what the federal government and the local and the state government can and cannot do. And you hear all these people saying, "Oh, shut it down. I want the president to shut the whole thing down." And these are people that you thought were Republicans, and then you have Democrats arguing like, "Why do we need to shut everything? That doesn't make any sense." I'm confused completely.
That's the thing. Democrats are accusing Trump of not being the very thing that they thought he was going to be, which was a fascist, and in fact they're encouraging him to be the very thing that they've been calling him all along.
Well, again, and I'm going to repeat this over and over again, if you listen to the last two podcasts, is that it's not split down Republican and Democratic lines, like a little bit, like based off of, just mindset, but what it comes down to is your position in life versus, so then you take your age and your financial situation versus, how upset are you going to be if you, lose your job versus how upset are you going to be if you get this? And that's where the lines are split, and it's not a party line. It really isn't. That's why, look, we've been the Tampa Young Republicans the past, however many years. And during this week, when we came out and said that, we urge the city not to shut down and we urge the city to listen to us. And all we asked for,
baby steps.
All I am asking for is a plan. At the end of the day, I have five questions that we're asking for, right? Like 5 things that I wanted answered before we decided to shut down the entire economy and the entire world. No one's done it, by the way. And why I say that is because there have been plenty of people within the Tampa Young Republicans and within the party who are not happy with the way that is. They want everything shut down. Again, I would say it has to do with the fact of what their financial situation and what their situation in life is. That's where they're coming from it. And they think that everything should be shut down, but there is a disagreement even within our group, and as small as it is.
But it's also coming from the fact that they have loved ones in the front line.
Sure, of course.
And so
there's a lot of elements.
Like, I have friends who are autoimmune deficient, and they're scared for their lives because they're at risk. And it's not just age or party. It's whatever is your personal life, and everyone has their own personal aspects. And I think this is why this needs to stop getting political. It's just people need to realize that they have to be looking out for someone else. And I think people are doing that, but people want to politicize people helping other people, and whether or not that should be forced or not.
It's weird how it got super political, and then people are trying to not make it political, and people are getting upset with the Republican governor and mayor, or governor and president, and you're like, look, I am a numbers person. So when I see that you've done 60,000 tests and 56,000 of them are negative, we're still around the 10%. That tells me that this is not as blown as you would assume.
I think you're going to. I think
trajectories.
when this is all said and done, I'm going to keep repeating these numbers because I'm going to pull the footage.
A lot of people are going to have egg on their face. If this doesn't blow past 1 million deaths, it's going to be insane.
I've been saying 30,000 deaths. That's just I'm trying to be realistic about this, and then 10 million unemployed, which is going to be the trade-off, and then I think we're going to probably look around a 1% or so death rate. And again, I understand the reasoning for what we're doing and everything, but those are the numbers that I'm looking at, and again, not based off of some scientific model that I'm going to try and tell you is the end all be all. Listen to me, but I'm saying just trying to look at this objectively, that's kind of what I think it's going to be.
And people need to understand that we are not the healthcare system in the United States is nowhere compared to
we're not Italy.
Oh my gosh, the one-payer system of Italy or Spain. I think it's so stupid when people keep on saying, well, they have the best healthcare system in the world. Obviously not, because that's what's happening right there. And the way they built themselves and the way they've had such close connections with China. The city of Florence was having a whole thing, well, let's hug a Chinese person the month before the city got shut down because of the virus. And now there are 10,000 deaths because of that ignorance that's happening over there.
Well, and one of these countries are about the size of one of our states. Yeah. And that's the other thing. And so while their population centers are very close to taking up the majority of the country, and again, their resources are far more limited. Again, New York City, Los Angeles may be kind of the epicenter of these things, but you go to the outskirts and you go to other cities in California, and there's plenty of resources there for those people who may be suffering from this virus there.
So let's get into the difference between what's happening at a state level, a local level, and a federal level, because right now, again, you probably most people understand what's happening at a federal level, right? They're watching the news and they're seeing what the CDC says. They're looking at what Donald Trump says, and right now we have not enacted martial law. As far as the update of this show, we have not enacted any martial law, right?
Some county commissioners would love for us to.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. That's what I want to get into is the fact that at our governor, who is doing a great job, has enacted very strict guidelines for what we're doing here. Right? We don't have restaurants open. We don't have groups of 10 or more. We're keeping our 6 feet of distance. Okay, you took away my exact wrong
donation.
Bad timing.
We're keeping our 6 feet. So we're doing. We're following the guidelines right at the state level. Now at a local level. at a local level, it is whatever disorganization is happening at your in your local county commission.
That first meeting,
I loved it.
I laughed and almost cried so many times.
Not everybody that watches this show is in Tampa, so I just will give you the details of I don't
think anybody had paid attention to any type of local government to that extent until that may be the most excitement local government has ever had.
They should live stream everyone.
They should live stream everything.
I want to see faces. I want to see what their face looks like. Yes.
So
I agree.
So that's the thing, though, is that
I only communicate with facial responses.
But every local mayor,
I want to see what they're doing behind the camera.
Yeah.
I think it should be, especially now with emergency because they're all on phones. It needs to be video.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it should be video, and I think we probably should enact that.
I need to see who's working behind the scenes, giving them papers.
It should probably be in our sunshine laws that you have to televise. You have to televise, but you also have to live stream online because no one's watching PBS 2, Channel 2, or something, whatever it is.
I watch
Some people don't have cable.
We're not watching C-SPAN. No, it should be live stream. They all should be live stream.
Some people don't have cable.
Anyway, to move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have cable either. So, but your local mayor or your local board of county commissioners are making their own rules because they have the authority to do so. And again, whatever the community looks like in Tampa, it is a fairly dense. Pinellas is fairly dense. Our mayors decided to come together and basically put out an order, which is a lot different than a suggestion or a directive. where they're just kind of advising you to do something, right? Like there is actual teeth behind an order, right? And so the order that they put in to effect that we spoke out against very loudly last week as the Tampa Bay Young Republicans, and again, thank you to BizPac and Conservative News Today for relaying our message across their listeners and their readership. The warning that we allowed them to kind of like give them a second to reconsider a full entire shutdown, and then also taking such a strict action of making it something that is legally enforceable. Yeah. We have crossed a really scary line. I know,
and this was the point I was trying to make offline, in our chat group where we talk and plan about the show to Anibal, which is the fact that they changed the word "stay at home" to "safer at home" means absolutely squat. It means absolutely nothing, because when you compare the city of Orlando's, who allegedly was far stricter than ours, the verbiage is exactly the same. The graphic artist might as well have been the same. Yeah. They use the same blue, the same white, and the same bullet points. And all it accomplishes is making people stay home when they could be at work. And all the bullet points were the same, and the fact that whether it's enforceable or not, as we're seeing now, and we're going to talk about the river later, it is really is subjective. It's entirely subjective.
Yeah, it's very subjective, right?
But it's subjective when you're not following the guidelines that we've all been told from the president, from the governor.
So there's
but the law should not be subjective.
So this is what's going to end up being. This is what's going to end up being the debate, and this is what is going to split down party lines. By the way, it was not going to be about necessarily the virus. It's going to end up being about what can be done when a locality like Hillsborough County decides to put in an order that essentially risks and infringes upon your basic rights of freedom of assembly or freedom of speech or freedom. Again, like if you're out walking around now and assembling in groups of over 10, you're now able to be arrested. I mean, we're seeing it today. So again, it's a very scary,
very large example of someone taking full advantage of after being told multiple times not to do something.
It is just the point.
It's one thing of just being around your friends and you're doing that, but when we're going to get to the river, it's 500 people that you allow to be together. Yeah. When you know that there's these guidelines.
And I'm not saying that the guidelines are wrong, right? Because I think we're all in agreement that we should be doing social distancing, right? Like we should be adhering by CDC guidelines.
Social distancing?
And everyone is, but the big difference is that grocery stores aren't. And so the big difference is
they're doing their best.
They are
not the individuals that are running the grocery store. It's it's people in the grocery stores that are not, and which I think is going to have to happen. They're going to have to start limiting the number of people.
Well, they are. Because I was at one of the grocery stores. I'm not going to name. I don't know why. But they had certain steps that you had to take, and they were allowing only a certain amount of people go in. This is a smaller one, so I understand why they're doing that, because it could get packed and crowded in there. But if grocery stores aren't doing that anyway.
Well, I'll give credit where it's due. Costco is a perfect example. They've put in the plexiglass, which we now know Publix has done. Where was I? Best Buy's not letting you go in the store at all. But again, now they're doing the plexiglass. Costco has been controlling who comes in and out of the store. You can see them, watch them clean off all of the shopping carts. And then you've got these smaller, more local supermarkets who aren't doing any of that. And it looks like any other day. And as a matter of fact, I drove by the Home Depot the other day, and there was a line out the door. So hopefully they're controlling the amount of people going in and out of there. But you wouldn't have known, that Home Depot this weekend from 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So I guess at the core of this argument, that's going to end up being what I am going to assume is going to end up being a Supreme Court case, because we are going to get to the point now where we have, again, during a crisis, I understand that, at a federal level, if they came down and enacted things like martial law and things like suspending habeas corpus and things that we've seen in the past during wartime, which Trump is saying this is a war, but they haven't done it yet. So again, a locale coming down and saying that if you assemble in groups of over 10, we're gonna arrest you and throw you in jail. That's that starts to infringe on your constitutional rights. And
I
so
agree,
it's going to be a big argument.
I agree that we are definitely in that tug of war what's happening right now. We did our best to remove from shelter at home, which is what she wanted to do originally. She wanted to shut the whole thing down to the point of what we got, and the essentials and the exceptions and everything else was 10 pages long. So right there, you can still operate and do it. And now they're having conversations about barbers.
Yeah, like who is essential?
Exactly.
Who's essential?
And
So it's
that's
subjective.
the biggest problem.
Like you
that
said,
you have individuals picking and choosing which companies can work and which companies can't. And then you have the blowback of, well, everyone should be staying home. Well, if you don't have the economic ability to do that, then you shouldn't be having this. You shouldn't be judging people for that.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. What is it that the Republicans have to be the ones thinking about the lower 20% that have to ride the buses, that have to work to be able to put food on the counter? Like, God bless everyone here that we have the ability to keep on giving money and be able to like keep on feeding our families, but people don't have that option.
Yeah, not everyone has that option. And so again, we came out with our letter.
Yes.
We gave guidelines for what we wanted to see, answer some basic questions. The mayor decided to respond differently. The emergency planning group decided to act differently. I heeded my guidance, by the way, guys. If you don't know why we have this graphic above, is because after we decided to make this letter, I ended up in the PSA. If you go watch the mayor of Tampa and the mayor
someone
of,
say they took it down.
Yes.
no, it's not taken down. It's still up. Actually, you can go see it on the mayor's page. But
I
I do have a cameo in the PSA that I disagree with, which, by the way, is the best troll job by the mayor's office. The mayor's office that I've ever seen in my life.
If
I am
she
so
has
impressed.
something to do with it, kudos.
She has nothing.
Yeah, she has nothing to do with it. But
with
it was amazing to see your face under that portion.
Under the part that says "heed the guidance," guys. This is clear of like who is supposed to have an opinion about this or not.
Oh, I love
He's
it.
the expert.
I love it.
By the way, I heeded the guidance. Like, I did not go out to a church this weekend and go take place of any congregations that were taking place. So that leads us into our next topic, which is why this has become such a heated problem. Is our pastor at the River Church, a pastor at the River Church was arrested today, just a few hours ago, after holding a congregation of a couple hundred people. Is that
500 people? I don't know if they did two services or one.
They did two.
Yeah.
So what it was that they had the morning ones and the police came, and then I guess they had a conversation that said, and the church agreed that they wouldn't do the 7 p.m. and then they end up doing the 7 p.m. service, in which led to all of this.
I hate that he's the one that we have to use an example of when the government has gone too far.
No, I think he's the perfect example.
I don't believe he is. We've all had these conversations for years talking about how this one individual pastor has been trying to either get money out of politicians to say that they'll get in the chair, or to manipulate donors to keep on donating money, or keep on using the word church, and even to the point that he lied to his congregation, saying that they bought all these kind of different things to make sure.
Hold on, guys. So because what I want to point out for the people who are watching who are not from the Tampa Bay area is that this isn't your typical Christian church. Okay, and I don't want to go down the path into what exactly is going on at this particular church, but let's just say it's very questionable as to what is going on at this particular. Yeah, and that's putting it lightly. And without having to go into the details, there are a lot of questionable things that go on in this church. The guy's not even an American citizen.
Well, this is
I didn't know that part.
And he's constantly dealing in local politics. He's taken money from politicians. He's also promised money to politicians. And so we're not dealing with your typical Baptist, Methodist church that you're going to find down the street.
And that's what I want to say about this before we go too deep down a rabbit hole where we start talking about this church. What I want to make very clear is that the fact that the sheriff and the state attorney and the city has essentially made the decision to arrest this guy for disobeying the direct order, which is enforceable by law, but probably infringes on your right to assembly.
Right to assemble.
They made this decision. personally think very based on individual motivations, and that's not what's going to end up coming out. Again, I'm assuming there's going to be a lawsuit here, and so once there is a lawsuit, you're going to start questioning the broader picture here of what we're talking about, of like, can you assemble, despite your disagreements with this person personally, despite your disagreements with, you know, individually them as a person or whatever it may be. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because
well, here's the thing.
that's why I think
how
it was
mad
the
do
wrong...
you think these people would be if it was a mosque that did it? They would be saying arrest
all of them.
All
Exactly.
of them.
Would they have done this if this was a mosque? And that's the conversation.
And
And
I
that's
would-
why I don't think the sheriff or the city or state or county should have done what they did, because now this causes a lawsuit, which they're probably going. The city will probably lose.
No, but you had
move forward
to
with
you had to make an example of somebody. And the truth of the matter
I
is
think
he
that's
did this
scary.
knowingly, and he has lied not only to the authorities, but he has lied to his congregation.
Yes.
But he claims he has these magical machines that he brought into the building that cleaned everything, which I can assure you is most likely a lie. They claimed, and some of this has been reported, some of this hasn't, they claimed that they got permission to hold service, which was a lie.
Well, we
And-
don't know that for sure. We don't know did they get permission, and if they got permission, who
From
was
who?
who was the government
Who was it?
official that approved
Sure.
it?
Again, so
and if
I
they
don't-
didn't, they're frauds because it's a fraud church.
So I don't
it's
want
not a church.
I don't want to go into the details and make accusations. What I do want to state the facts of is that Hillsborough County has an order which you can arrest people for congregating in groups larger than 10 in a room, and they acted on it. And again, I don't necessarily blame the sheriff, which is what it seems like everyone's going to try and do, is blame the sheriff. But the sheriff doesn't make the laws; the sheriff enacts the laws, right? The city
And
and
enforces
the board of county commissioners made this, which is why we urged against it so hard as an order last week. But nobody listened to us, and so here we are in a situation where they have to make an example out of somebody, and now we're going to have this philosophical debate, and I hope we have it again next week because we're running out of time. But philosophical debate over, again, can a local government decide to make this order and enforce it and arrest people for doing that? And again, versus your constitutional rights.
And that's
But I think. Go ahead,
that's where the
Anibal.
question is going to be, because at the end of the day, you're giving people now the incentive to test this theory out.
Yeah.
That's why I really wish they had not done what they did on both sides, because now you're going to have plenty of congregations and other groups that are going to want to congregate, and you're going to have to sheriff. They're going to constantly have to make these calls, and that's the problem.
I think this scares everybody off from doing it.
I
should.
don't think it scares that many people.
It scares
off
me
whatsoever.
from going
Absolutely.
out. I heeded the warning. Where's my picture? I am heeding the guidance. We have 6 feet.
We are
I'm
out.
not getting arrested.
We are out of honey jack at my household.
But I
we
will
have heated this morning.
But just like, why do they get to be above everyone else?
I don't
Why
think
do
that they
they?
do. I don't think that they do. Again, I think this pastor should not have done it. I do think let's make that very clear. This was a dangerous thing to do, to put 500 people in a room.
Correct.
Me wanting to put on like a podcast with 3 people in a room and trying to make this as safe as possible is not the same as putting 500 people in a crowded room and everybody breathing together and a bunch of old people. So like, you put all
They
of
got
those
some
things
young
together.
people. They got
you put all
some
those things together, and it is dangerous,
youth.
and he should not have done it. Let's make that very clear. He should not have done it. But under his constitutional rights, is he still allowed to do it? And that's what's going to be a very difficult question. I think it's going to end up being a Supreme Court question.
We are Americans. We don't
It's
know
happening in Tampa.
what happened. Exactly. We don't know the concept of no. We're all Floridians. There are a lot of parts of this county that no one travels through, and they're going to start testing this theory out.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
see,
what's
this
gonna
is
happen.
where your rights end at the moment that you're jeopardizing the safety and the rights of others.
Not if
And
everyone
so-
went there knowing the consequences and risks that they were given.
Yeah, they know the
And
consequences.
that's
they did it
where
anyway.
the argument lies.
Yeah,
I'm not disagreeing with you, Johnny.
That group at large.
I'm not disagreeing with you
I
whatsoever.
understand that, but that group at
they
large
still have a constitutional right.
Yes, but now those 200, 300, however many people it was in that building, those people are now going out into the public.
I don't disagree.
And I can
I
assure
don't
you
disagree.
that just by the mere odds, there was somebody in that group
I don't disagree with any of that. I don't disagree
that
with
was
any of
infected.
that. However, we still are running this fine line of where the constitutional right of individuals are trampled over the safety of the
it's
general
like if you
public.
I think
enough
the
panic-
safety of the general public supersedes that.
And if you cause
and
enough
we'll
panic,
have our court case because of it.
and yeah, exactly. And if you cause enough panic, what worries me, and like I don't like using slippery slope arguments, but to me
Correct.
it's not slippery slope argument because we're this close from having a Democratic president, and then them saying that environmentalism is a global crisis and an emergency, enacting the same emergency emergency laws and then deciding that if you're driving in your car, you're breaking that emergency law and go to jail. It's like, it's not that far. And so like, again, like while I disagree with almost every actor in this situation, by the way, like every single person that's going to be brought up in this situation is going to be wrong. Kind of like the Tiger King. And so what's going to end up happening is that there's going to be a lot of people and a lot of different elements to try and like comprehend and mentally juggle, because it's not just going to be black and white at all. But it's going to be a tough thing. And again, I think we're going to have to move on because we're going to start running out of time.
Yeah.
And I desperately want to talk about Tiger King.
Topic for next week, because I'm theory, this is not the end.
Oh, no.
And I think especially for
no.
the local Republican Party, this is just the beginning.
We're entering into week 3 of this whole quarantine situation. Can you imagine mid-May or like mid-April?
God.
This is going to be a disaster. If we're already having problems with this only 4 days, not even 4 days, 3 days into it, and we're having issues like this.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Start having checkpoints on Del Mabry and Bayshore? That's when things get completely out of control. And then you have people like us purposely breaking the rules that you're arbitrarily
We're not
putting.
purposely breaking the rules.
No,
but that's why we're saying that
we have to have this conversation now, so we don't get to that point.
But this is where you disagree with me, Anibal, and I'm telling you, the word safer at home or stay at home, they don't care. They're going to enforce it just the same. And you may think that one letter or that one word makes a big difference, but again, if this continues to get worse, they're absolutely going to take advantage of this, and they're going to start enacting stricter,
we have to agree to disagree, because I read all 22 pages of that, and if you are a business that can continue to function under CDC guidelines, you're allowed to continue staying. You're allowed to stay open, and that is the difference between stay at home and safer.
No,
at
it's
home.
not. There's not. That's not that. It's a directive or an order. It's a language.
That's a whole different conversation.
That's what it comes down to. Because I don't care if it's safer at home or stay at home. The point is, if it's a suggestion from the government, a strong suggestion, versus something that you can get thrown in jail for. That's the line. That is the difference. The key difference between what separates us and a lot of other countries that don't do so well.
Yeah.
So like I'm
not bowing to public pressure of saying
tough.
that
And it's tough
you're going to kill
pressure.
people. How does someone say, well, President Trump has blood on his hands because he hasn't closed down the country?
Yeah.
That is the stupidity of that argument.
Well, that's essentially what Jane Castor was trying to do.
She was
constantly on the call.
She was trying to put people into a panic, saying that people were going to die.
Yeah, well, and again, people are going to die. No one wants to have a hard conversation.
No one.
People are going to die. Like, again, how many people is so far and wide going to be debated over the next few weeks and months that, again, it's hard to even to get a number around it. But again, no one wants to come to that hard realization. But again, where people did die is Tiger King. And now we have to talk about
beautiful segue.
Now we have to talk. Now we have to talk about the number one show in America.
Jesus.
The number one.
It's not on my queue. That's all I'm going to say.
It is the number one most recommended, most watched thing on Netflix. Everybody is home right now. Everyone's talking about it. It is the most important thing. And so you have to talk about how, again, now we have just down the road from the River Church that we were just talking about.
It is
not
not.
It's not down the road.
Down the road.
It's not.
Okay, as far as the country is concerned,
6 feet
by the way,
away.
as far as the country is
Tampa's a
concerned,
big, small town. It's a really big, small town.
as far as the rest of the country is concerned, we have Big Cat Rescue and the River Church at the same city, and that's all that they
Same
care about.
Right.
Okay.
And Busch
Can we-
Gardens in between, right there.
Gardens in between.
And Carrollwood and the USF area.
And
If you
we're a
have not
strip
watched
club
this
capital
show,
of the
by the way,
country. Let's just add that.
I cannot.
Come to Tampa.
Come
There's
visit Tampa when you can.
When you're allowed
when
to.
the apocalypse is over.
Well, I'll tell you, those businesses along 60 got a nice plug in there. I mean, they got storefront signage
There
and
was
everything
some
in the
signage.
Netflix.
Yeah.
in
So if you have
the
not
documentary.
gone and watched Tiger King on Netflix, first off, go watch it. It's the best 7 episodes of television you will watch.
Yeah.
In the history of television,
I
I
would
want to
agree.
say. It doesn't matter where you fall on these issues, but now what is going to come of this? What is going to come of this is that the Tiger King has come up with 2 very important questions. Is one, Carol Baskin, who runs Big Cat Rescue, Netflix makes the case that she killed her husband, right?
Allegedly.
They
Well, she
allegedly.
kind of concluded herself with the sardine oil.
You have to talk about this stuff. This is a big deal.
Oh, my
because,
God.
Now it's like, did Carol do it? Now the sheriff, the same sheriff who just went out and arrested this pastor, just posted on his Facebook and on his thing, if it's still an open case from like 20 years ago, that if you have any tips, they're going to look into the case. So
Now everyone that saw this is going to be a detective and is going to automatically make comments.
Yeah,
on
it's
it.
that one
hashtag
TV show.
check the sewage drain. There's
that one show. It's like
what's it called?
Don't F Cats. Have you-
That was a big one.
So
It's not-
So full disclosure, back in 2012, when I was at the Republican National Convention, we actually volunteered at Big Cat Rescue. And funny enough, the things that that Joe Exotic points out, like the horrible landscaping and how everything seemed very unkept, like that's literally what we were sent there to do. We went there and we cleaned up the cages. We did, moved a bunch of debris and cut weeds and all. That's right. So, I mean, to see all this kind of come around, I had no idea. That was the first time I was there. I went back a second time, the only times I've ever been there. But I've lived here 14 years and I had no idea this was a thing.
Well, first off, there's something I want to say about this.
I lived down the street and I didn't know it was a thing.
So this one thing I want to say about
summer camp trips there.
is that this is big business. It's very big business.
Yes.
And why this ties into politics, and the reason we're talking about it, besides being the number one thing in the country this year, is that there is really actually that she's trying to pass laws through Congress about banning roadside zoos, like your Dade City Wild Things, your McCarthy's Wildlife, like all of these places that are like breeding tiger cubs. The breeding of tiger cubs is bad. Let me come out on the record and say that, right? Like it's bad to breed tiger cubs and then kill the tiger cubs because they become not cute anymore. Like that's a real problem. It's also a real problem to have them in your backyard, which is why a lot of locales have come out and made laws that you can't have a tiger in your backyard. Some you can. And so again, this is actually something that's probably going to be brought up a lot more over the next year, which is a big deal. And then again, you have people who are like, well, at the same time, like, we should be allowed to breed tigers. And then that leaves us to the hashtag free Joe Exotic, which is, should you be allowed to breed tiger cubs? Like, should you, what's the guidelines in doing so? Again, he was very possibly, allegedly framed for murder and is now sitting in there. And I actually think I'm jumping around a lot.
Attempted murder.
There's a lot of facts in the 7 episodes. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you have to try and like get in there.
Not a lot of spoilers here, by the way.
Not a lot of spoilers in here. I think that they're going to have to ask the presidents, during the presidential candidates, during the debates, whether or not they're going to pardon Joe Exotic.
Made it to the stage.
Because you have to be able to answer that question. If you can't answer that question, if you don't, you're going to fall on one side of this line, Anibal and Parker and Johnny. Where do you guys? Let me ask you guys. Where do you stand? What do you think about Joe Exotic? And should he be exonerated? Should he be pardoned?
Put people like that on the point. If this is not appropriate at all,
it's policy. No, it's policy because it's. Should you? It's kind of goes with the fact of
should you believe a Netflix documentary and that should sway your
should you be able to own an exotic animal, which is a huge problem in Florida. Think about the pythons we've had here.
Yeah.
Okay, but full discllaimer, Anibal hasn't even watched
No, I haven't watched it.
Anibal hasn't watched the show. Anibal doesn't even
This is
get
like
an
when
opinion, by the way.
Johnny was talking about the Dave Chappelle episode.
First off, in the comments, I want to know 2 things. 1, do you think Carol Baskin killed her husband? 2,
allegedly killed her husband.
2,
well, no, that's a direct question.
And two, do you think that Joe Exotic should be in prison? What do you think his sentence should be? Because personally, I kind of think Carol did it. And then, second,
nothing invested
second, Joe Exotic is being. I kind of think he's getting framed for murder, guys. I kind of think he's getting framed for murder. And while he deserves to be charged on killing big cats, I don't think he should be charged for murder. I think that the other guys are trying to save them and they set him up. They're trying to save themselves.
I agree with that. I do think, though, Carol does need to come out and say she's a hypocrite because she used to, back in the 90s, she was doing the same thing. And there are reports around Tampa of people saying she used to do this, this, and this. And she needs to come out and say, that was me. This is me now. I've changed, but she hasn't done that.
It's our version of Alligator Alley, honestly. So
What?
No, Anibal.
Stop.
No,
Stop.
Anibal.
Just go
Watch the show first.
I'm not watching the show.
Watch the show first.
Watching the show.
First off, you need to.
It's not on my top 10 list. It's not in our queue whatsoever. We're watching other things.
No, you have to. Like,
You're wrong.
it is
You're wrong.
your responsibility as a Tampa Bay resident to watch Tiger King.
You should know what's happening in current events, especially in Tampa.
Hell, as a
my
Florida
God.
resident, it's your obligation to watch Tiger King.
I'm not going to be pressured into watching something that is stupid.
Like everything else on this show, Anibal, you are wrong about
I love
this
how
opinion.
you've been waiting to say this the entire time.
You are wrong about this the same way you're wrong about many other things on this show.
Oh, we have plenty of
guys,
taste to say otherwise.
I think that Tiger King debate is going to have to continue in the comments. We are. I apologize. I want to apologize to everybody for the first few minutes of the show where we didn't have audio. Hopefully, thank you for sticking with us throughout, some of the mishaps we've had today. We're always trying to clean up the show. We're always trying to make it go smoother and smoother every single week. Other than that, again, thank you guys for watching. Do you have everybody else want to give their final thoughts on any of the topics that we're talking about today?
I do want to go back and say a huge congrats to Governor DeSantis for another baby DeSantis.
Yay.
Baby maybe? Yeah.
Mamie?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So thank you, or not really thank you. Congrats. We have another baby.
Anibal.
Kudos for passing the CARES Act. There's going to be a lot of help for a lot of people, a lot of small businesses, a lot of YRs that are part of the gig community. And honestly, teachers and parents that have kids at home, good luck. Again, do not kill your kids. It looks really bad when you try to enter into the job market at the end of the summer.
What?
Or use sardine oil.
All right. So to try and end it on a couple of good notes, again, I think that it's really important to remember, like, one of the reasons we do this show and we write articles and we do the things we do and we're involved with the Young Republicans organization at a federal, state, and local level is so that, we are fighting for, the rights that we believe in as conservatives, fighting for constitutional rights and individual rights and personal responsibility and all those types of things. And there are, as much as we joke about a lot of these different topics and as much as we, again, kind of, there's so many different pieces of everything that we're talking about, that's ultimately our goal here. And again, I really implore people to go in the next few weeks while you're at home and while you're, you don't have work as much right now, and you spend time with your kids, spend time with your family, learn about a lot of the issues we're talking about. Don't stop fighting for all of the rights, because if we give up as conservatives any bit of some of the rights that we're kind of starting to see infringed on, I don't know when they're going to come back. So that's what we're trying to do as young people.
We're always going to push back. That is the requirement as a conservative. We are always going to push back when it comes to anything that infringes on individual rights.
Yeah, and then go watch Tiger King. Decide for yourself about Carol and decide about Joe. What should be done.
Someone create a YouTube video for an explanation in
I'm sure
3
there is
minutes.
one already.
Just watch it.
And then
I'm not wasting 7 episodes on that.
Yes, you should.
And
And
again, my final words are: this disease is not Bird Box. It is not that terrible movie. You can go outside. You can see the sun. You can interact with people. Adhere by the CDC guidelines.
But stay 6 feet away.
Adhere by the CDC guidelines. But this is not something where we need to hide and shudder and completely just avoid like the rest of the world. You can go outdoors and you can see things.
You can still conduct business. You can still visit. You can still do all that you can do as long as you follow CDC rules and guidance.
So we are here. So thank you, Johnny. Anything?
Thank you for blocking the 6-foot guy.
All right, so I just wanted to go on record that yes, I think Joe Exotic was framed, though he should be in jail for tiger breeding. I don't want, man, I wanted to say so much more, but I don't want to ruin it for you. So definitely go and watch Tiger King. Support Florida-based film and documentaries and productions. Thank you so much for watching. It's The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics, not just Florida politics. Again, thanks to BizPack Review and Conservative News Today for carrying the program. Again, our best wishes to Mamie, the Governor DeSantis' new baby. Thank you, Parker, for remembering to mention that. We'll be back next Monday, 7 o'clock. Make sure you subscribe, review, and check out the audio version of the podcast on Google, Spotify, and Android. On that note, cool cats and kittens, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Oh,
Good luck.
wrong button. There we go.
Good luck.